The following content contains personal experiences of our hosts and guests. We are not experts in this matter. We encourage challenging conversations with others and to achieve healing from our childhood. We hope to connect and allow a safe space to have an open discussion. It is not intended as a substitute for the advice of a qualified professional, diagnosis, or treatment.
I mean, the shoe's off in the house. I see that so many times in a lot of Asian API identifying films, and I'm like, yes, don't make it weird for us.
Yeah,
I remember there was like an article saying like, is it rude to ask your guests to take off your shoes before entering the house? And there was like so much back and forth, and I'm like, for me, I'm like, no, you're entering my house. I don't,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Take them off.
Yep.
Or here's some house slippers.
It's a sign of respect. Yeah.
It's
Take
just
your
part
shoes
of the
off.
culture.
Plus,
know your
sanitary
audience.
reasons.
Yes.
You don't want freaking dirty shoes in the house.
You stepped in dog poo and now it's gonna be on all over the floor. Carpet? No, thank you. Yeah.
Exactly.
So just know if you ever visit me, my place, no shoes. No shoes.
Same. All right, welcome back, First Gen podcast listeners. Hope you guys are having a great summer. Tiff and I here, we've been so busy, but super happy to be with you guys. And we recently saw the movie Dìdi, so we want to dive into that and talk about that today. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, we both saw it independent from each other, but if you haven't seen it yet, it's all in theaters since mid-August, and definitely resonate with me. I think they nailed the Asian American experience as a person growing up in the 2000s. I felt very seen, and it was very nostalgic.
Definitely.
And I thought the director was written and directed by a Taiwanese American filmmaker, Sean Wong. Very, very insightful. And it really dived into the Asian identity, but also just a coming of age story of a teenager going through the motions. And before it was like basically the cusp of internet, right? The digital world, analog going to the digital world, how technologies at our fingertips, information's at our fingertips. So got to see how that all came to be in adolescence.
Good old AOL Instant Messenger.
AOL AIM.
Tiff, what was your screen name? Is it appropriate to say?
It's appropriate. I mean, I was a teenager then. I had two. I think one of them my dad actually helped pick out, which was interesting, but it was Shy Pinay.
All right.
Shy Pinay. Yeah. But the one that I made in high school had this ongoing joke at restaurants where when they ask, what do you want to drink? I ask for diet water. So I thought that was a funny
I remember that.
Yeah, funny little prank that I did in high school. Sure, I pissed off some waiters and waitresses, but someone got a great laugh out of it. So my screen name back then was Ordered Diet H2O. Was one of my screen names.
Wow, nice.
Yeah. Do you remember yours?
Yeah, so I had two. Well, I had one in high school, and I was super into Radiohead. So one of their one of their first albums is Pablo Honey. So that was mine. I just thought it sounded cool, but it didn't make sense to anyone that didn't listen to Radiohead.
No. And that's how I knew. I was like, what does this mean? And I got into that album because of your screen name. So
yeah. And then in college, it was Neeners, Weeners 14. Weeners. So it's not like, spelled like wiener, but yeah. So kind of inappropriate, but
how funny.
Great way to start chatting with other guys in the door.
Of course. Icebreaker. I mean, they have funny screen names too in this movie. But
Yeah, they do.
yeah, let us know what if you remember or recall your AOL's Instant Messenger screen name. What was it? Ping us,
Yeah.
DM us, drop us a line on the Spotify poll. We'd love to hear from you. That'll be fun to
Yeah.
reminisce the AOL days, AIM, whatever
Aim.
acronyms and shorthand terms we used back then. But yeah, that was like the go-to after school, is just like getting on AOL
Yep.
and cutting off our parents' landline so we could be on the internet for
Mhm.
uh good times, good times. But I think this comes to a good point where we can say we're gonna dive a little bit deeper into the movie Didi. So if you haven't watched the film, please stop listening, stop watching. If you don't want any spoilers, we are gonna dive a little deeper. So if you don't want any spoiler alert, don't. This is a good spot to stop right now, and or we'll
Mhm.
go and watch the film and then come back to this spot, and then
Yeah.
we can talk some more. We can talk about it.
All right. Cool. The one thing I noticed was kind of like the sibling relationship that they had.
Yeah.
Um, so she was the older sister, right, going to college, and he was obviously younger. And it just seemed like totally like night and day, total opposites. And so I think about that, like for me, because I was the younger one and my brother was the older one and he was going to go off to college. And so I felt the same way Dee felt. Like it was like, oh, what a relief she's going to be gone or he's going to be gone. But
Oh
then
wow.
towards the end, I was like, no, like there was a bond there, and it's just too bad we never got into it until she left or he left.
Hmm.
And so that was like one thing that I thought about and that resonated with me. I'm like, I'm so lucky now that I have a relationship with my brother and we're still close. But I'm curious to hear, like, with you, Tiff, like you and Carissa, obviously you're the older one, and did that experience or that scene also resonate with you?
Yeah. Funny enough, like I got to see this with one of my close friends from high school, and that was one of the questions asked towards me. Because I am the older sister, and so I did leave the house before anyone else. And for me, I was like, yes, I'm out of here. I'm finally free. But there was that inkling of like, man, I'm leaving my sister behind to deal with the house, what everything that the interaction with our parents. And that was always like, that's a bummer. And
Mhm.
we were 3 years apart, and it was just like that sucked, but I was also happy to get out, and the freedom and taste the juice of that. But it was, and we've briefly talked about it before in the past, where like when things turned around, like when I graduated and then she was going to college, I also was now moving back into the house. Because I only did 2 years of college in the dorms, and then my last 2 years of college, I commuted, so I stayed at home. So then
Oh.
my sister was
Hmm.
out. She was out of the house, and she was tasting that juice of freedom. From our parents. So she's like, "Thank you for dealing with, you know, our parents during the times that we both were here, and without each other and not having that same support. But at the end of the day, that bond is what still connects us to this day, and like, but different experiences of, living at home or coming back to the house after being away for school and college. And yeah.
No, yeah, I just thought that relationship was interesting. So yeah, thanks for sharing
Oh,
that.
cool. Yeah. No, that was a great question, because the different where you're placed in with siblings, it's like it is a different experience. Older, younger, middle, like it's a different experience coming into it. And
Mhm.
It could be drastically different, or it's similar where you both feel the same pain, and it's just like, yeah, here's something we can both relate and talk about, and that we're
Mhm.
not alone, you know?
Mhm.
Um, so I was very glad that, you know, I had I have a sister I can lean on and talk about the things that I was going through, and same with her. And very, on the same page of like, oh yeah, that sucks. Or since I was older, I remember things a little bit differently and can recall things. It's like, oh yeah, I didn't know that happened or didn't understand the context. So it's kind of like I was sharing my perspective of like, this is how I saw it,
Mhm.
you know.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, the one like I did like seeing kind of the characteristics of Didi's mom.
Yeah.
There's that term in Asian culture that's been coined tiger mom, or it's along the lines of a helicopter parent.
Mhm.
And I liked seeing that there was a contrast though. There were moments where it's the typical like society is saying like this is how your child should be. Like her friend and the son when they're like eating at that restaurant. Um,
Mhm.
where the mom's friend was like basically bragging about her son saying like, "Oh, his GPA scores are 4.0 and he's doing all these
Mhm.
extra academics to like get him into the right school and things." And then, Didi's mom was like, "Oh yeah, he likes skateboarding."
Mhm.
And you could kind of see it in her face. It's just like not the same caliber, but I think she also felt for her son. Like, I think that was also getting portrayed, seeing the mom's tender side. I do like that she was also aspiring in the art space, like a very
Yep.
non-traditional
Mhm.
career path where she finds like her hobby and her aspiration is through painting. And she brought up, her dream, but like at the end of the day, her dream was really, her kids. Her kids
Yeah.
was the dream,
Yeah.
and that was so beautiful to see. Yeah, the sacrifice, despite it's not like the traditional. Oh yeah, I need to be doctor, lawyer, nurse. Those type of things. She wanted her dream to be in the artistry, and but straight up said, yeah, her dream was her children, and just seeing that, and that was such a beautiful thing, and that hit me. I was like, oh my gosh. So we got to see kind of both the tender side, and it's so nice to like paint that picture instead of the typical like the mom's friend where it's just like, yeah, you need to get good grades. You need to work so hard. You need to work on the weekends and go to someone's garage and take extra
Tutoring
classes.
lessons.
Yeah, all the tutoring to get your GPA and scores up. And yeah, when Didi really like the car ride basically
Mm.
let it all out, like, all the
Yeah.
anger and frustration he's built up. He straight up just tells his mom because he got in trouble for doing something, and the mom defended the person that Didi, attacked instead
Mhm.
of standing up for her own son. And he straight up was like, "Are
Mhm.
you ashamed of me? Are you ashamed of me?" Like,
Mm.
basically saying, "I'm not the extension of you." Like, I'm not the extension of you comparing between, you know, others' accolades or accomplishments. It's like, I am your son, I am your child, and parents should be proud of it, just like that, right? And he
Yeah.
was just like calling out for it, and that was to just see that on the screen because, like, wow, I've never felt so heard or seen with that moment.
Yeah.
It's like I've thought it, but I've never said that, and he like Sean Wong really articulated right into the screen. I was like, wow, that felt like we're not alone, or I'm not alone in the situation of my
Mhm.
young childhood experiences.
Yeah.
If you resonate, like, I don't know if you related to that as well, or any takeaways.
Yeah, I mean, everything he was feeling in that moment in that car was like everything I was feeling in my childhood. Like constantly feeling like my mom was ashamed of me. It was like it only mattered to her like how she looked in front of her friends. Like so her kids were like a reflection of her. But I have to say, I mean, now that I'm older, and Joan Chen, I mean, she did such a great job playing the mom, and she's a great actress, and
Hmm.
I just her as like kind of a single mom in that movie, right? Because like their dad was like um back home, like trying to
Overseas,
make
yeah.
money, and just like her mother-in-law. First of all, I want to talk about that
Oh,
because
yes. Yes.
my mom and her mother-in-law never got along. They lived with us for a bit, and even after my parents split, like it was just really nasty. But it was the same thing. She was always like, "Hey, why can't you be strong enough to like take care of your kids? Like, why are you so weak? Why?" And it's
Oh.
interesting because the mother-in-law saw her that way, but she really wasn't. I actually think she was the opposite. She was probably the strongest mom figure I've really seen,
Hmm.
and that reminded me of my mom. And yes, there's moments where she's struggling, there's moments where, she might, like, make her kids feel crappy at times, but there is that tender side of her, like you said, like, she's a true artist at heart. She tries to understand, but there's a cultural boundary there, that and it's like it's not her fault.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I try to understand that with my parents now.
Yeah.
And she was just doing the best that she can.
Yeah.
And you know, again, like using your kids like as a reflection of you, I mean, that's tough. I don't think anyone should ever do that, but I think that was her way of measuring whether or not she was a good mom, was to compare herself to somebody else's mom and their family. And so like everything she felt in that car too, like I can only imagine that's probably how my mom felt,
Hmm.
right? And I can never come to understand that. Um and so yeah, definitely that moment in that car was huge for me. That definitely resonated with me. And then, we'll talk about the ending, but towards the end, you kind of see her growth and her progression along with Didi's. So yeah, definitely. Just I'm not gonna
Yeah.
lie, I cried in the movie theater. Okay, I never cried in movies, but I did at that
Ooh.
moment.
No, it hit me
Yeah.
too.
So
It
yeah.
it hit me too. And I do agree with you on seeing that side and where now that like understand the other perspective because for a long time it was just like me and my experience, but
Hmm.
yes, this is a cultural shift and what they took from their home country and bringing it here to the States is like they're learning too. They're learning as much as we're
Hmm.
learning to fit into whatever mold and what's around us. They were trying to assimilate as well and trying to understand the culture, but they had their culture, what they've
Hmm.
grew up with, and then what they've only known. And now it's just like giving that grace to them, and the understanding and like, hey, I get it now. Like, just like mini moments in the film that I thought was also great was like within the Asian American family, where like just like the little mini moments of you know um the mom basically it was after that car ride and her love language is food, and I've read this and heard this somewhere else too. It's like, yeah, maybe they can't express themselves or articulate how to connect with their own children, but food has been the love language with a lot of moms. And like
Yeah.
the one thing that they go to is like, have you eaten? Are you hungry? Instead
Yep.
of listening to what the kid's going through. I'm like, I don't care about that. You look at me, I'm crying. I'm like, this is what I'm feeling and going through, but not realizing how how like our parents may have been taught. It's like food has been like the nurturing way to love and show love. And the funny moment was like, I think they went to a burger joint, right? And the
Hmm.
mom was like, basically
eating the burger and took it apart and was cutting it with a fork and knife. And, Didi's comment was like, "Oh, so Asian." And I'm just like, "Oh, man." But that's what she knew. And I can remember as a kid in my adolescence saying the same thing, like, "Oh, why do you have to be so, Asian? Why do you have to be so Filipino?" Like, for the moments that I would see my parents doing something that I'm just like, ugh, like, have to look the other way and be ashamed of what our parents were doing,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Funny because I actually do that with my burger now. So whatever my mom was doing with her food, I start
Oh, I
doing
cut
that
mine in
now.
half because it's going to be easier to eat.
And I'm walking around with an umbrella, so
The shade. No, I
all
think,
those
yeah,
things.
all those
Yeah,
things, I'm like accepting of it
although
now. I'm like, I'm okay having an umbrella outside. It's too hot.
yep,
The sun rays are burning me.
yeah.
So I get it. I get it now. But we used to make fun of it back
Wait, do you
then.
remember in this movie if they had MySpace or was it Facebook or both?
They did both.
Okay, that's right. Because I remember I was like
They
my
did both.
MySpace like top 6 friends or whatever.
Yeah, my
that,
top 8.
that made me laugh.
I thought it was
Tom.
I thought it was funny how instead of asking his friends like, "Are we still friends?" He had to like look at his friend's MySpace to be like, "Am I on their top 8?" Like
I know,
I could
right?
remember that. Like, are we in a good
Yeah.
space that we're still
Yep.
friends? And if you're not on their top 8, I'm like, "Oh, I think we have some beef now."
Yeah. Right.
How
Yep.
the digital
Oh,
age, yeah, and just like learning how to like for him, it's like learning how to be a skater, photographer, or filmographer. He had to like Google that. Like, there's so much in this digital age that you can just look up, you know,
yeah. Yeah.
which was
I
very
mean,
new during that time
mm-hmm.
frame.
Yeah, I
But
think he Googled so many things during that movie, much like that's exactly what I was doing too, like
yeah,
at that age,
yeah,
Because you're just like, ooh, I have like the answers by typing it in.
yeah, it's
Craziness.
it's all there,
Not always the right answers, but can't believe everything you see on the internet. But
right?
yeah, I think that was part of the struggle too with like his mom and the parenting. It's like now there's like this new like internet, it's like the internet is like this new thing now. And it's like, what is that?
Yeah,
Like, what are they doing on there? That's gotta be scary.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, yep, I hear you. Because there's so much info there, and you can't. Before, it's like easier
Mhm.
to shield. Now, you, it's all out there. It's all out there, at your fingertips. You can
Yep.
ask anything. You don't even have to ask your parents. It's just like, and they can't lie about it or make their own stories. It's the digital age of information. It's kind of scary.
Mhm. Mhm.
Kind of scary. But yeah, I think another part that hit me to like now like reflect on the other perspective of yeah, the mom side was like when Didi had his skater friends randomly just showed up or kind of
Mm.
self-invited them into their house while the mom wasn't there, and uh you know seeing Didi get ashamed again, that ashamed feeling, I was like I related to that, and I loved seeing that interaction, where the mom was excited to see, her son has friends, they're over, and the son, the
Mhm.
new friends obviously were like complimenting the mom about the paintings and just like feeling
Yep.
seen with her artistry. And of course, Dee was like, ashamed of you, like get out, and like was speaking terribly towards the mom, and those guys got to see it, and it was like, hey, don't talk to your mom like that. I was like, oh man, from an outside perspective, now I was like, I shouldn't be that disrespectful towards my parents. Like I was in
Mhm.
situations like that where I'm like, man, that must have sucked
Mm.
for someone walking into the situation. Like you shouldn't disrespect your parents or mom like that, you know?
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
dang,
I think sometimes
that
like
hit me.
when we were younger, we perceived that as like the worst thing possible, but it really wasn't. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Right.
Like it's just like, no, she's just walking in here. I'm sure
Yeah.
that everyone's parents have done that. But yes, I have done that to my mom many times. Like pushing her out of my room when my
Mm-hmm.
friends are there. Yeah, so that hit me hard too.
Yeah.
So, well, what I wanted to talk about in the ending for me, like when he runs away and he doesn't come home and she was just in bed.
Mm-hmm.
I think at that point she was just like, he's going to do what he's going to do. I need to just be here but not be angry, right? Like I think that was a lot for her to overcome and just be like, "Hey, I'm not going to be angry. I'm going to be compassionate and open." And I love that conversation at the end. Like I cried again in the movie theater during that
Mm-hmm.
time because I
Yes.
think it was a lot for her to overcome, but it was a lot for him too. And I think they finally found some sort of harmony with each other. I mean, wasn't perfect, but for her to just say that she is proud of him and just the way she was like looking at him, like she just was relieved of any anger or frustration. And it was just all love in that moment.
Y-
And so, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
It was
yeah,
beautiful. It was
it
beautiful. And the
was.
connection that they had was like, oh, I hope many more, people have that same connection with their parents. Like
Hmm.
that is that is true love. Instead of the scolding or like the
Hmm.
reprimanding that, we've internalized for so long. It's like, oh, if I do this, I'm
Yeah.
gonna get like this back.
Yeah.
At the beginning of that moment though, like I do agree with everything you said, but the first moment where she's like related it to his sister, where it's like, oh, your sisters ran away
Mm.
or
Yeah.
whatever, and she didn't bother like looking for him. At that moment, I did feel like, oh well, because he's a guy. I kind of got like that because
Mm.
he's a dude versus a lady that
Mm.
went missing for X amount of days or hours and not returning
Hmm.
home. I felt like that was a gender, you know,
Mm.
a gender preferential of like a parent where it's like, oh, you're a guy, you can take care of yourself, you're gonna be fine. But if it's a girl going out missing, mom's gonna freak out even more. Is kind of how
Hmm.
I like the
Yeah.
leniency of it. I feel, I don't know, that kind of made me think that way for a second in that interaction. But like you
Hmm.
said, I did love the connection that they both, found at the end of the conversation because I was like, where is she going with this? And it was beautiful because it started off, it was just like beautifully written and displayed on the screen. So to both the actors and the writing, I was just like, this is so genuine and so loving, and yeah, it was so nice to see.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I didn't actually see it that way. So it's interesting that you saw it that way. That didn't even cross my mind, but yeah, no, I mean, look, I think this movie was very emotional, provoking,
Yes.
nostalgic. And I think it was just, yeah, like in just so many like growing pains that we've
Hmm.
all gone through, like all in a movie.
Yes. All
Yeah,
displayed
so
right there on the screen.
for sure.
So nice. So nice to see. But yeah, go check it out. I think it's still out in theaters. If not, it'll be out
Hmm.
in streaming. It's really a good one. Get your tissue boxes, get ready to cry. Or and laughed. Again, there were so many good
So
moments.
many funny, like, yeah, so many funny moments. Yeah.
So many great moments. If you're in that generation that grew up with AIM, AOL, just any instant
Mm,
messenger, you know, um, and balancing, like, because they still went out to go play outside. Like, we still did that. We played outside.
mhm.
Also, we're
Yeah.
on the internet. It was a nice mix of both worlds and got to see that on the screen. So yeah, if you relate to anything we've talked about or anything resonates with you, please tell a friend, share this episode. Let's continue to talk about it,
Let's keep talking about
it. And yeah, you could always find us on Instagram. So at First Gen Podcast.
Down here.
Check us out. Send us a DM. Let's connect and talk about it. We'd love to hear from you and find other topics of conversation. We'd love to dive in and just heal from those times and
for sure
understand each other.
Yeah. And DM us your AOL Instant Messenger screen name.
Yeah, we'd love to see
Signing
it.
off, neeners, weeners.
Signing off.
Diet H2O.
Order Diet H2O.
I love
Until
that.
next time.
Until next time.